good morning. Let's talk about the distributor today. Talk about the distributor. Anytime your car is not running, even if you think it's not running right, you never know whether it's gas, problem with the carburetor, or problem with the distributor. Well, we're going to talk about the distributor today. So here we have the head with the mounted distributor. So the first thing we want to do, we're going to remove the distributor from the head. So you want to take a 9/16 box end wrench. You're going to reach down. It's going to be between the manifold and the head. And so you're going to loosen this lock nut. All you have to do is just loosen it just a little bit. Then you can take your screwdriver and reach in here. You want to back this off. There's one. Back it off like 2 turns, maybe 2.5 turns. Reason you don't want to back it off any more than that is because it only has about 4 or 5 turns on it. If you back it off and it falls out, it's going to fall down behind the manifold and it's going to be hard to get to. And if you take it all the way out, then it's difficult to put it back in again. So we only have to pull it out far enough to release the distributor. All this does is hold the distributor down. Doesn't hold it in place, but it just holds it down. Now you're going to take your screwdriver, leave underneath here, and you're just going to kind of rock it back and forth, pull the distributor right up. Now, just in case that doesn't work and it's stuck in there, because a lot of times they rust in, then we do the following. We're going to remove the cap, remove the body, remove the rotor, and we're going to use this little holder to hold that cam, and we're going to remove the cam by undoing this screw on the top, and now we can pull the cam right off. There's this screw. There should be a lock washer and another washer in there. There's not, but that's okay. We're taking it apart anyway. So now we have this open. Move this up out of your way a little bit. Now you take this tool, take on these 2 studs, take the nuts off these 2 studs. This is number 3 and this is number 6. That's in the order of when you tighten them. That's the sequence that you tighten them in. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now you're going to slip this down right over where this bolts were. We're going to run this down, and we're going to screw this into loosen this up all the way. We're going to screw this into where we took that cam off. So we're going to screw that right in there. Now when we tighten this nut up here on top, if you can see what's happening, it just pulls that distributor right up out of the head. So now once we pull that out of the head, we can then unscrew this puller. Let's stick that aside. Now we can get the distributor out. The cable normally will be fastened to this number 8 stud with a clamp. If it is, you're going to have to take that nut off, and you'll be able to have a little bit of slack in the cable. Then you're going to have to unscrew the distributor from the cable. You can't twist the cable because it goes all the way back up into the ignition. So you unscrew this and just take that right off. So now we have we'll set this aside. So now we have the distributor up here loose, so we can now work on it. Now we have this fixture that this makes it convenient. It's just a block of wood with a hole in it. We have a hole for the distributor to fit in. We have a keyhole. We've run a screw in the side so we could lock it if we wanted to. And we have a notch over here that we can use for the putting the sleeve on and off. Okay, so we're going to take the distributor and we're going to drop that in. It'll fall right in there. Now we're going to take the condenser out. Now we can pull the condenser right out to the side. Now, because these get in the way and they're cumbersome, we're actually going to pull those off. They're held in by rivets. We can just pinch that rivet closed and then push it right out. Now we have we can take that out, pull that. Now we have those out of the way. So now, because we have removed the cam, we can now slide this around to where the tabs line up and it'll just pop right up there. Oh, now this is interesting. There's a wire that goes from the lower plate to the upper plate. Every time you move your spark advance, you flex that wire. And this is what happens. That wire will break off and you won't know why your car won't run. Normally we would just take this nut off right here and remove that wire. Then we might as well remove the spring. This is what holds the tension, holds the top plate tension into the groove. Okay, now we want to remove the oiler. The oiler is this little guy over here. The way the oiler works now is that you can oil through that little hole and it will oil the lower bushing. We're going to modify this so that we have an oiler for the upper one also, but for now we're going to take that out. So what you want to do is get a small punch, put that in the oiler hole, take a screwdriver and lay it behind that punch, and you can rock that back and forth, and you can work that oiler right out of the hole. It's a press fit. Okay, now we have everything off here. We have the condenser out, so we can take the lower plate out. You can't take the lower plate out without taking the condenser out first. So now we have these two screws, and you can see the two screws holding the lower plate in. Now we can grab that lower plate and lift it right out. Okay, now we're going to take this shaft out. The shaft is held in by a sleeve. What we're going to do, this short sleeve, and then it has another sleeve that would fit down in, and they're keyed, so they only fit one way. That produces your complete shaft. Previously, the shaft was one big long shaft, and since it has a collar on the top, it has to go in from above. What happens is that down in this lower part, you can see this gets all corroded and rough, so that's hard to pull. It's hard to pull this shaft. If it's a long shaft, it's hard to pull it out. So basically what we would suggest doing, and here's another one, and it has the collar on it, so you would have to take the collar off, slide it down over And if this is all rusty, it's difficult to do. So the thing to do, just go in with a hacksaw. Just take a hacksaw and cut it off right there. Cut off just the head of that sleeve. Now you can pull the upper one out. You're not going to reuse these anyway, so you might as well. Now here, we have the short shaft and we have the sleeve is on it. So what we're going to do, we're going to drive that pin out. That's what this little notch is for over here. We lay this in there. We take the small pin and we put that drive in there. And we just drove that pin out. Now we can pull the sleeve off, and now we can take the shaft. Now you'll notice there should be another washer on the other side of this shaft, so that's an error on the assembly of that. Okay, we've got it ready. Now we want to take out we have bushings, a lower bushing and an upper bushing. So we need to get those bushings out. So what we're going to do, I'm going to show you on this one. What we're going to do, we take a 1/4 inch NPT, National Pipe Thread. It's tapered. So we're going to screw this in. Now we want to go in very easy, because since this is tapered, if we push it in too far, we might split this end of it. So we're going to cut our threads as we put this in. We're going to cut the threads as we go in. So we run that in till we get a good tight fit. Now we're going to drop that back in here. We're going to take our punch. Now we've got a heavier punch. We just reach in there like that. You can feel it going down. Take that off. And lo and behold, there it is with the bushing. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other end. We tap that end, do the same thing, and drive that out. Now we have the unit ready to clean up. What we're going to do, we're going to put the lower plate screws back in, because we want to protect those holes. This is a handy little gadget because it'll lock the head of that screw. So you just lay that in the slot, push that up, that holds your screw. Now you can reach in there and put the screw in like that. So we're going to put both screws in. So now we have this, the bushings are out. It needs to be cleaned up. We have the holes protected. Now we're going to take this in, we're going to media blast it, clean it all up, get it all nice and clean inside and out. I want to make sure that we clean this groove in here, because that's where the upper plate is going to fit, and it needs to make electrical connection in there. So we're going to clean that out really good. Okay, now that we have that all cleaned up, we're going to bring it out. We're going to put our condenser screw in with a washer So we cover up the area right here where we're going to paint. We're going to mask this inner groove so we don't get paint in that groove, because remember, we have to get electrical connection there. And we're also going to mask the foot because that has to make electrical connection there. Once we do all that, then we can paint it. So we've now painted it, and you want to paint it with something like, this is an engine enamel. It's a 500-degree ceramic paint. The location of this in the engine, right on the top of the engine, is fairly hot. Manifold can get up several hundred degrees. So we need a paint that will withstand that temperature, so you want to use something like this. This is from Napa, but you can probably get others that are similar. So now we've painted it. Once we get it all painted, now we're ready to reassemble. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to put those bushings back in. Here's the bushing. We have a piece of 1/2-inch threaded rod. We want the threaded rod because a bolt would work, but it doesn't have enough threads on it to make the full press. So we put on a washer, put on your bushing, slide that in, another washer, and your nut. Now you need a couple of 3/4-inch wrenches. Hold this in and just start tightening. And you can see that's just sucking that bushing. It's going to suck that bushing right in. Okay. Okay, now we have the top bushing in, and you want this whole surface to be nice and flat and smooth, because we have that's where our cam is going to ride. Okay, now that we have the bushings in, now we have to ream the bushings so that we can get, so that our cam can fit. It probably won't fit now. I forgot to mention that on this foot, one of the things that you can do is file a flat area on the side of this foot between the ignition input and the oiler to let out the steam and any moisture that collects down in the lower shaft. That's the reason the lower shaft will rust up, is because the moisture can't get out. So we're going to open that up a little bit. The later distributor bodies will have that already on it. This is a later distributor body. It has it on there, but we can take others, and if it's not there, we can just file it on. With that flat, we can lay this in a vise, kind of come up against that flat area. Now we're going to take a reamer. Now this is a 1/2-inch, so the shaft is, 1.5 thousandths less than a 1/2-inch. So we're going to ream this out to a 1/2-inch. So these are adjustable. So we adjust our cutter edges, and you can adjust the cutter edges by using your micrometer. and you can set that so that at the high point on the cutter, it should read 1/2 inch. If the bushings are very undersized, you may have to adjust for a smaller cut and then cut it twice. We're going to try it this way. Another reason for the long shaft, and we have a tapered sleeve. So we're going to run this down in. We're going to put the tapered sleeve up, and that will center the lower half of that shaft so we come straight in. You need to have both the upper bushing and the lower bushing reamed out in a straight line. It's called line bore, and they need to be bored straight. Each one of them could be bored out and have it fit, but then the shaft wouldn't go in because they weren't lined up. Now you put this in, and you're going to go in holding this sleeve in there, and we just start cutting. So we can ream that out, ream it down. When we're all through, we're going to put pressure on this lower end, and we're going to keep turning. We're going to bring it out the same direction we went in. So now we take that out. We take this, turn it over so that you can see what you're doing. I'm going to put this in up through here. I can put my sleeve on, center it, and now I can do the same thing from this end. I can ream into it this way. Well, it's not going to cooperate. I'm trying to set up so that you can see. So that when you want to take it out, now you just push on that end, continue to turn it. Same direction. Now we have the bushings in, and we have reamed them to fit. Now if you were to take a shaft, here's an old shaft, so we can just drop that in there, and it has no side play at all. It has like 1/2 thousandths of tolerance on this. So now we have new bushings in, reamed it. We want to install the sleeve. So we take the new shaft, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's a sleeve or a washer, thrust washer, that goes on. That's not always called out in all the diagrams. Some of the diagrams don't show that. So you put that on. You drop that back in. Oh, before we do that, we didn't mention that because of the oiler hole, we want to take a Q-tip and go in and clean out this oiler hole. It actually goes between the two upper and lower bushings. So any oil that you put in here generally only goes to the bottom bushing, and that's where one of the problems comes in. So we want to clean out that oiler hole. Now we can drop this shaft in there with the bushing, with the thrust washer, and we can take this sleeve and see we have a hole in the shaft and this sleeve. Now you can slide that sleeve on there. Take your pin. We're going to slide that on. We're going to line that up. I'm going to try and line it up with the hole. Now I can put that pin in. Now we can see how much end play we have. You're allowed 3 to 5 thousandths of end play. So if you take your feeler gauge now and you're going to measure with your feeler gauge, okay, we've got about 25 thousandths of end play there. So we're going to put in a fiber washer. And so we'll measure, we've got 25 thousandths. We measure the fiber washer, that happens to be 40 thousandths thick. So we need to go back and remove 15 thousandths off the edge of this sleeve. Okay, so what we're going to do, okay, we wanted to remove off the end, so we're just going to take a file. We're going to remove from the material from the end. We want to move it nice and straight. So now we can measure that. Okay, so we've taken off about 20 thousandths. Now we put our fiber washer on, and with the pin started, we can go right in, lay that in our little groove here. Okay, so now we have that in. We'll finish that. Now we've got the shaft in. Now we start assembling the inner part. So now we have the sleeve on, and we have the fiber washer in, and we have the right turn, and we have maybe we got 5 thousandths of end plate. Okay, the first thing we're going to look at is, you remember when we took this apart and the inner wire was broken. That's a common error. So we're going to look at a lower plate that does not use a wire. It uses a spring-loaded plate here. So when we put this in, we're going to line up this contact point right behind where the ignition wire comes in. But if that ignition wire gets pushed in, screwed in too far, it will bend this inner plate over next to the inside wall, and it will also short out. So what we're going to do, we're going to cut a couple of pieces of just regular black tape, electrical tape. We're going to lay that in on the back side here. Another technique was to lay a piece of insulating material in and just lay it around the inside. And that's probably a good way to do it, but the tape is easy. So we're just going to put the tape on. So line up this contact with where the cable's going to come in. If you line that up, that should just slide right down around there we go. So just slide right down. Now best if we reach in and make sure that the screw holes are lined up. So our screw holes are lined up. Now we take our screw holder. You have to pull out on it and turn it to set it. We take our screw and a lock washer. We can grab that, lock it on, and we can reach in and run that screw right in. Then repeat for the second screw. Okay, now we have the inner plate in. Now we're going to put our condenser in. Remember, we covered up this hole so that it was not painted. Looks like we got a little paint on there anyway, so we're gonna just kind of clean that paint off. The condenser needs to make electrical contact, So now we're going to put that in here. We're not lining up quite right, so let's just pull that. Now we can line up in here. Okay, now there's a fiber washer goes in. Put the fiber washer in through this electrical input hole, and you can just slide it, and it will slide right down and line up with where the condenser goes in. Then if we take our condenser, now we're going to grab this screw, and we can go through that fiber washer right into the end of the condenser. If we had the condenser in there. Okay. Now you can run that screw up in there. Okay, before you tighten it, let's go back over here, and we're going to put in our ground screw and our lock washer. So I put our ground screw in. We can tighten that up. I'll go back over and tighten up the other screw on the condenser. Okay, now we have our condenser in. We need to put our oiler back in. So we have the little oiler. So now we line up the hole so we get it nice and lined up. Then we just put the oiler in. So now we can get in here. We can oil this lower bushing this way, and we can also then, because our shaft now is drilled vertically and then cross drilled, so we can add oil to the top and it will come out on the upper bushing. So now we have the lower plate in, we have the condenser in. Now we're going to put in our upper plate. So here's our upper plate, and it has the point block, which is this piece here. So we mounted that with 2 screws on the back side. We mounted our points. Here's our rear points. They're spring loaded. So we put that over the shaft, squeeze it together, and then put the anchor bolt down through that hole. But now what we're going to do, normally, you see, you would add that wire onto here, but we're not going to add a wire. We put a nut on and then a lock washer, and then we put an acorn nut on the end. The round bottom of that acorn nut then will ride against this spring-loaded plate, and so we'll put our spring in. Then we'll drop this upper plate in through the 3, lined up with the 3 notches. Go down, that locks it in. Now anytime we move our spark control, we're moving this, but we're not flexing that wire because we're using the spring-loaded plate. Now we want to add our cam. So now we have our cam, which fits down on. Move the points out just slightly. The cam fits down. Now we have a flat washer, and then we have a lock washer, and then we have the actual screw that is drilled for the oil hole. So we're going to put that in. Now we're set. So everything is in. What you would do at this point is to bring this around until it's at its highest point on the lobe. And you would take your feeler gauge for 20 thousandths, and you'd run your feeler gauge in, and what you'll do is you loosen this upper screw, put your screwdriver in the other half of the points, and with this at its highest point on the lobe, we're going to set that so that it's 20 thousandths thick. It's 20 thousandths gap in here. Now another way to do it, which is the more modern way of doing it, is with this little gadget. This is very much easier because now you have a sleeve. It's just a thin material. It fits right around the cam. Pull the points back just slightly, drop that down. That holds the points open. So we want them 20 thousandths, but we need to pull 20 thousandths plus another, which turns out to be 15 thousandths thickness of this sleeve. And it comes with the feeler gauge. Using this is our feeler gauge. So now if we set it right for here, don't forget to tighten this up. Now when we pull this off, now we have 20 thousandths of gap. The advantage of this is you don't have to locate the high point on the cam. So you can at any time pop the top of your distributor, slip this in there, and measure your points. Just that easy. And you can reset them if you need to. It takes part of the guesswork out because you aren't guessing as to where that top lobe is and have to crank the engine over to get there. You also want to be sure and add some lubricant. If you add this lubricant right on the side of the cam, you can see it just squirt some on there, just right on the side of the cam. Now when that cam comes around, the rub block on the points will pick that up, and that lubricant will lay in right behind that rub block and keep it lubricated all the time. Now you have your distributor, your condenser, your points. They're set at 20 thousandths. Now when you want to reassemble it the rest of the way, we have a rotor, and the rotor is going to go around, and at every firing point, it will be lined up with the little tabs in the body here. And there's a pin right here and a slot, so we need to line those up. So that drops in. Now what we're going to do, one last setting, we took a regular cap and just cut it off. And it's a good idea to do this. Now see this? This should mount on there, and you should be able to feel the springlet, feel that spring, because this little tab should be push it on this, on the contact. So now we've replaced our clamps to hold the top on. We've put a rotor in. Put the body back on. Put our modified top on. Now we're going to check and see as the cam rotates, it passes by a contact which is connected over to here. This contact is connected to here. The distance from the tip of this rotor to that contact, we want that to be 25 thousandths. So now with it all together and with this modified cap on, we can reach in and we can measure that. So what we're going to do, we're going to measure all four of them, and we're going to find the one that is the farthest away. Farthest away, we're going to take our rotor, we take our wide nose pliers, we'll grab that rotor right at the tip, and we will bend this up slightly, just slightly, and then insert it again, and we'll measure until we get our, some say 20 thousandths, some say 25 thousandths. I've always set them at 25 thousandths. I think that may be the most common dimension. So now we've got this one that's the farthest away set at 25 thousandths. We will then go to the next one, and it should be less than 25. So we're going to take the body off, file that down, file the tip down slightly so that we can make that 25 thousandths, and repeat that for all four. Now when you do that, of course the next thing is to take this off, put your regular cap back on, and that should fit with some spring. Snap that back on. You should have yourself a nice distributor all ready to put in the car. The only thing left to do is to actually time it. We need to time it to the engine. So there you have, you've just rebuilt your whole distributor.